Welcome to today's update video, and we're mostly going to talk about Hurricane Linda today. Linda's been oscillating, it's been on an oscillating intensity some, but it's been on a slow weakening trend. I mean, 2 days ago, a storm, early this morning, the storm was downgraded to a Category 1 hurricane. After being a Category 2 hurricane for a couple of days, it was actually starting to intensify a little bit. It's been on a slow downward trend since its peak as a Category 4 hurricane 2 days ago. And the ANC has probably lowered the intensity a little bit too fast, just because of how well the storm's eye wall. The storm's eye has stayed together, and the deep overall structure has been relatively constant, with the deep convection, just the main structural trend being deep convection. When you can see the you can see the buzz. You can see this. You can see Hurricane Linda still has the same buzz saw look that it had on my last video, and on the video before that as well. You can also see the outflow of a tropical storm in the Atlantic. Could potentially cover into the basin. That could potentially enter the basin in about 5 to 6 days from now, and we'll talk about that when we discuss the models. You can see I want to point out how low the shear is over. You can see the storm has managed to have a divergent enough setup that all the rising motion kind of is allowed for the storm to kind of create its own environment and become part of the up-level anticyclone that was, and become embedded within the upper level, or at least extend the upper-level anticyclone to the west that was that's mostly been located off the coast of Baja California. It's been shifted to the west due to all the divergence created from the hurricane, or at least the western periphery of the upper-level anticyclone. As you can see right here as a result. As you can see right here as a result, you can sort of see the low wind shear. That's allowing for the system to continue really weakening at a very slow pace, and the rate of weakening is largely being really entirely just being driven by the marginally warm waters that the system is moving. And though it's actually moving over slightly warmer waters right now, the system is generally starting to resume a little bit west-northwestward motion. So I think the period of moving over warm waters probably isn't going to last a particularly long period of time. And the system's likely to start weakening appreciably after tomorrow. I think we'll likely see the last of Linda on Friday. You can see the storm still has that same annular structure that the storm was kind of famous for over the last 2 days. You can still see that it's still expanding Sirius out, but it's honestly it's really excellent everywhere. As you can see, this has been very treacherous. We might see an increase in the satellite intensity estimates relatively soon. Just because we're starting to see some colder cloud tops re-emerge, and if we still can get like a black rain, a full rain, or black to black imagery, I think we could see this would trigger the satellite intensity estimates to increase from T4.5 to T5.0, depending on which frame, to potentially a T5.5, which is a T5.5. And the forecast estimate of T5.5 is indicative of major hurricane intensity. The T.5.5 corresponding to 102 knots, or about 115 miles per hour. 115 miles per hour. In addition, the system has also generally sustained itself on microwave images. You can see a very classic truck tire look on these two recent microwave passes. A little bit less so, it was a little bit more irregular in the more recent ATMS one than the GMI one. But regardless, the system is still remarkably holding together. Well, not really remarkably, the storm is continuing to hold together, as I sort of kind of laid out in my last few videos. The system has certainly delivered and kind of met the expectations that were met the storm's original expectations of basically being a long-track major hurricane. It actually had potential to become strong, unlike most of the storms so far this season. It's also now taking a look at the GFS for a minute. The European doesn't really show anything. I'm just gonna take a moment. You can see that is tropical storm Grace. It's likely to become in the Atlantic, likely to become a hurricane before hitting the Yucatan, and potentially become a potentially strong hurricane in the Bay of Campeche. It's probably I might give some this in my next video. I might primarily, even though I don't generally talk about the Atlantic systems, I might talk about Grace just because the storm could one be a player, as you can sort of see in this model on this basin down the line, and two, actually after several days of struggling, actually as a fairly interesting, has a fairly high chance of rapid intensification in the Western Caribbean. There's a fairly high chance of, you can see, I'm gonna pull it up, I'll pull it up right in here. I'm just gonna pull it up briefly. The current recon plane is finding winds a little bit higher than the current intensity estimate of 45 knots, and it will not. And you can see systems has generally become better organized. You can see some very impressive up-level outflow that you typically would expect in a deepening eastern Pacific hurricane. And latest micro imagery, which I'm not showing, does starting to show an inner core feature. So it's certainly going to be one to watch. I think the odds are at least, it's highly likely to become a hurricane by the time the system reaches Jamaica. By the time between the Cayman Islands and the Yucatan Peninsula, it'll likely be disrupted some by the land interaction of the northern Yucatan Peninsula, but there's a lot of evidence that there may be some mid-level share in the Gulf. The global computer models also do and re-strengthen the system over that area, so it's certainly, I do think it's certainly possible that Grace could become a major hurricane in the Bay of Campeche before making a second landfall in Mexico again. But anyway, that's it for today's video. Hope you guys learned something from this.